Welcome to Learning Photography with Duck. Here's your host, Duck.
There we go. You know, there always seems to be a problem with this thing. Just when I think I got one part settled out, it fails on me. Anyhow, welcome everybody to another edition of Learning Photography with Duck. I am your host, Duck, and today's class is all about Photoshop. So we have a couple of things that we're going to go over first, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So while I'm doing the presentation, if you can just keep your microphones muted and just unmute if you need to ask a question, okay? So today's...
Duck, you got the wrong side up. You have a Lightroom Classic edition up.
Oh, I do, don't I? All right, let me switch that out. There we go. You have to forgive me. My head's been a bit of a cloud for past couple of days. Those of you who know my wife, Diane, she had a hysterectomy. All right. So she came out of, some pretty major surgery, and she's been at home. So I've been kind of helping her to be able to get around, get in and out of bed, get in and out of the chairs. So the past several days has been playing nursemaid. So my attention has been pretty much at home and not much else has been done. So I apologize if my head's a little bit in the clouds. I'm still a little concerned about Diane, but she's doing well. She's recovering nicely. And she does send her love. She told me to let you all know. Okay. So thank you for for pointing that out. All right. So what we're going to be discussing today is Photoshop. And in particular, we're going to get a little bit more into discussing layers and how and when to use them. And Carol asked if I can talk about doing a particular example. So we'll get into that as well. All right, so let me see. Whoa, let me pull up. Where's Photoshop? There's Photoshop. Okay. All right, everybody can see Photoshop, right? We're good? Awesome. Awesome. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up that image that Carol sent. Where is it? Carol example. All right, this is something that you found online, correct, Carol? Something that okay. And you wanted to be able to replicate something like this with Photoshop, correct? And so I assume you probably have a wide angle lens or a fisheye lens. Okay, because that's basically what this is. This is a fisheye lens that has been formatted into a circle. Okay, so in order to get that very forced perspective, there are ways of being able to do it with a standard non-fisheye image, but of course, you'll get better image quality if you start off with an actual fisheye lens that has that distortion. All right, so we'll see if we can do something, to that effect. And of course, I do not have a source image ready for this because this is kind of like a last minute. But I'll see if we can come up with something. All right. Let me open up Lightroom Classic. Oh, Lightroom Classic is already open. Where are you? There we go. Okay. And I don't know if I have a suitable image, but well, you know what? We'll see. We'll see what we can find. Okay, we'll take this one. All right. I will open it up in Photoshop. Let me switch over to Photoshop. And of course, we're going to have the screen of death here. Okay. All right. So this is those of you who went with us on the Norwich architectural walk around with Robert will probably recognize this image. This was one of the stops that we did along the way. So I'll use this as an example. Now you can see that it is not shot with a fisheye lens. So we don't have that really funky distortion. All right. So what I'm going to do is we'll tackle how to create that just round circular vignette, which is like super, super easy. And then we'll tackle how to kind of replicate that fisheye lens look. Okay. There's a couple ways of doing it. All right. So one of the first things I want to explore here is different types of layers. Okay. Now, this is what is usually referred to as your base layer or your image layer or the main layer or the background layer. All right. Whatever term you use, it's whatever the first initial layer is that you have in Photoshop. And in this case, our base layer is this image of the church. Now, above that, what I'm going to do is if I go down all the way to the bottom here, you're going to see this square with a plus.
No, that doesn't show up here unless I minimize the screen. Hold on.
Oh, is it really pushed too far out?
Yeah.
It's right here at the.
Okay, I see it now. Okay. I had to.
Yeah. So if on your layers.
To redo this.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Let me change mine to the default. Here we go. All right. This will probably be more what your Photoshop looks like, right?
Yes.
I gotta apologize. I have a custom setting for mine because of the way I like to work with Photoshop. So, all right. So you have your layers panel. All right. You see the layer, the main layer. It's layer 0. All right. And on the bottom of that, you're going to see a bunch of little icons, FX, the little mask, the little half black, half white circle folder, and then a little square with a plus. All right. That will create a new layer, and it's a new blank layer. Okay. New blank layer. Okay. And what I'm going to do is on this layer, I'm just going to fill it with white. All right. So we can go image, or where is it? No, edit, fill. All right. And in the dialog box that opens up where it says contents, you have some defaults available to you. Okay. You can fill it with whatever you have as your foreground color, which is this right here on the side, foreground, background color, right? You can fill it with a specific color, a specific pattern, or pull something from your history. But all the way at the bottom, you have the option for pure black 50% gray, and pure white. So we're going to go ahead and just do pure white. All right, and we're going to hit OK. And you're going to notice that my screen turns completely white because this new layer is now filled with an opaque color, which is, in this case, pure white. And if we look at our layer stack, this white layer is above our original background layer. All right. Now, this is very basic stuff. Most of you guys already know this. So this is, pretty basic. All right. What we're going to do is we're just going to click and drag it down to below our image layer. Okay. And now we cannot see that white layer because the image is now above it. All right, so what we need to do in order to show this white background is we need to somehow occlude or punch a hole in the layer that has the church. So what I need to do in this case is, because we want to kind of replicate this look, is we're going to need a circle. All right. And that circle is very easy to get to. All right. If we look at our toolbars over on the side, the second tool down, you'll notice that it's kind of like a dotted outline of, in this case, it's a square or rectangle. And the next one down is the elliptical marquee. All right. So we're going to click on the ellipse. All right. And we're going to go up into the corner, upper left-hand corner, and I'm going to click and drag down. And if you notice that the marching ants, I can control, how I want it. If I want an oval, a horizontal oval, or a vertical oval, I can do that. But in this case, what I want to do is I want to restrain it to a complete circle. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to hit the Shift key, and the Shift key is going to restrain it to a perfect circle. So no matter where I move my mouse, all right, it will always retain that complete circle. All right, and I'm just going to kind of make sure that I have my church in place, and I'm going to let go, and it creates that that circle. Okay. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind is we have some icons at the top. All right. The top toolbar is content sensitive according to what tool you have selected. So the top bar will change according to the tool. So we have, we have the marquee tool. And the next we have several icons that indicate how Lightroom is going, how Photoshop is going to handle every time you create a new marquee. So right now we have it as single. So if I create another one, it's going to remove the one that is currently on the work surface and create a new one. All right. The next one is two squares linked together, means that it will take whatever you add to it is going to add to what's already there. So if I create a second shape, it's going to add it to that first shape, and so on. The next one is subtract, which is the obvious opposite. Any new shape I create is going to subtract it from the old shape that's there. All right. And the last one is, it's a kind of funky one because it kind of like takes the difference between the two. All right. So in this case, we don't need to worry about it because we're only dealing with a single shape. But by having it on a single shape, if I click within that shape, I can move that marquee around. So I can micro position it. All right. In this case, you'll notice that there are some purple lines that show up. Those are my snap guides, and I can snap this to the center of my screen. All right. So now I have a selection. All right. And currently this selection is on my image layer. All right. So with the image layer selected, I'm going to come down to the bottom where the mask tool is, and I'm going to click on that, and it's going to create a mask. And voila, I have myself a round shape. I've eliminated the rest of the background to that image, and we've basically recreated this effect. Okay. All right, so now if we look at this, you'll notice that there's a bit of a soft blend here. It's not quite a sharp edge. All right, if we look at the edge of this image, all right, compare it to ours, you'll notice that I have a very crisp, clean edge. All right, and we can modify that very, very easily. We come over to our layers panel, and you'll notice that I have my main image, which is the church, and then right next to it we have our mask. Everything that is black is hiding the church. Everything is white is showing the church. So white reveals, black hides. Okay? However, if we double click on that mask, we're going to get a dialog box. We're going to go into our mask mode. All right. And you'll notice that the white has turned to pink, or what we used to term as a rubylith, those of you from the good old days of graphic design. So if we look at the very top of our properties panel, the first thing you see is the view mode. And we have, if you click on that, you have a variety of ways you can look at it. You can look at it as an onion skin, all right? So whatever is hiding is kind of a little bit of a fade, all right? This is nice if you need to position a mask to a very specific point. It allows you to move your mask and move things around while still being able to see it, all right? You can have the marching ants, which in my opinion really doesn't do much. You can do the overlay, which is in this case the rubylith, and you can change the color of that. We're not going to get into that right now. You can do a black overlay instead of the rubylith overlay, or you can do a white, all right? But because we have a white background to begin with, this doesn't give us any information. You can do just a mask. In this particular case, it doesn't work for us, but there are times when you have a very complex mask, maybe something that's built on luminosity, like a luminosity mask. This can come into better use because you can see all the graduations of the gray tones on this case. All right, and then of course on layer, which in my opinion is another worthless one. Okay, most of the time I work on the overlay. All right, but anyhow, from here we have all kinds of things that we can do to our mask, and the ones that I tend to use most is the edge detection and the global refinements. All right, global refinements, which is what we're going to be using in this case, because what we want to do is we want to soften that edge up just a little bit, okay? Now, because we used an ellipse tool, it already created a very smooth outline. So we don't need to do anything with the smooth option here. But if you ever use the lasso tool to make your own selection, sometimes this comes in handy because you can smooth out, the curves that you laid down. Just be careful, because if you have sharp angles, it will smooth it out. You won't have a sharp angle anymore. It kind of round it off a little bit, so be careful with that. But in this case, what we want to do is we want to look at our feather and our contrast. Feather and contrast. All right, and what we're going to do is we're just going to add a little bit of a feathering edge to our circle. All right, and because I'm working on a, this is like a 21 megapixel image, all right, I'm going to need to boost this up quite a bit in order to get any kind of noticeable feathering, all right? So right about 10 pixels, all right? And when we go to 10 pixels, you can see that it's already starting to soften that edge, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to really exaggerate this feather for a second just to kind of show you what this other one does, and that's the contrast. All right, so what we have is we have a transition from 100% white on the inside to 100% black on the outside. And what the feather does is it creates a transition in tones of gray. To show you that, let me select it as a black and white. So you can see,
Doug,
yeah.
For feathering, you're actually bringing the feathering in instead of taking it out. You're bringing it in, right?
It actually splits the difference. It will feather it outward, but it'll feather it in a little bit into your selection as well. But normally it will feather out from your selection. Okay, so it will add to your edge. All right, now in this particular case, it really doesn't matter, but when it does, there's another slider we can look at. But what I want you to do right now is look at that transition, how it goes from white through the shades of gray to black. That's what's going to give us our soft transition, okay? We have the next one down is our contrast. And what that does is it just creates contrast along that gray edge. You notice that the white, the very light gray became white and the very dark gray became black. That's all it's doing is creating contrast. And of course, if we add, 100% contrast, we get a very, very sharp edge back again, okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to add a little bit of feather, add a little bit of contrast. Let's see, maybe not that much contrast. All right.
Doug, it seems that contrast and feather work opposite each other.
It appears like it, yes, but they actually do two separate things. In tandem, yes, but you'll notice when you start doing like retouching on people, on skin tones, or you're doing background replacement on people, that contrast of the edge will bring some of the detail that gets lost in the feathering. All right, so the feather kind of gives you that little bit of transition to the outside of the mask, but the feathering alone often makes it look fake. Because if you were to take a photo, for example, here, let me cancel this for a second. If we were to zoom in on this transition between the green top and the blue background, you'll notice that that edge is not super sharp. There is a little bit of a transition, all right? Some people will call it, I can never say the word, aliasing. It's where you take the green.
Aliasing.
Aliasing. Thank you. I always have a trouble with that word. But you take the green of one color and the blue of the background, and that in between pixel will be a combination of those two colors. All right. This happens naturally when we photograph a structure or a person or wherever, because light bends around things. All right. So what we're actually seeing is that blue light from our background is bending slightly around the edge of that steeple. And that blue light is now visually mixing with the green light that's coming off the steeple. Remember, we're photographing reflected light. Okay? So what we're seeing is a blend of the blue from the background that just kind of, it's minute, but it bends around that steeple, mixes in with the green, and we see a combination of the two. If you've ever photographed a sunset coming over a horizon or over a hilltop, you'll notice that the hilltop disappears and it's replaced by a bright light. Do you think that light is going through the top of the hill? No, it's actually being bent around. All right. That sunlight is a lot stronger than the light coming from this blue sky, so you're going to see more of an influence. All right. That's the light bending around surfaces. All right. So you just got a very geeky lesson there, guys. All right. Anyhow, going back to our mask. All right. So what we're doing when we cut out something to replace on a separate background, when we do the cutout, we remove that color transition between our foreground and our background. So by feathering, we are artificially recreating that light bending around the edges of our subject. All right. So we will add a little bit of feather. All right. In this case, I'm going to add about 10 points of feathering. All right. And in cutouts, when you give too much of a feather, it looks fake. It looks pasted in. All right. People will notice and go, oh, there's something not right with this image because the edge looks transparent. It looks like you're seeing through that edge. All right. So by introducing that contrast, you're maintaining that feather, but you're reducing it back down. All right. So instead of being, 100 points from white to black, we've now reduced the contrast to maybe 50 points from black to white. All right. Hopefully that made sense and answered that question about contrast. All right. On the big picture, yeah, it looks like it does the same thing, but technically it's a little bit more than that. All right.
Off topic completely, but on topic. Is there a slider just for values?
What do you mean by values?
I mean, going from white to black, but not that. But I guess there is. And the color ones, you can increase the color by value.
Meaning how you specify the transition with the mask? No, not really. All right. What it's going to do is it's going to start off with whatever value you have set up for your mask. All right. So in this particular case, I'm making a black and white mask. However, that's not the only type of masks. You can have masks with gray. All right. So if I have a 50% gray mask that's going to black, that transition is not going to start from white. It's going to start from whatever value you have there. So in that case, it'd be 50% gray to black. All right. So it's going to take the initial value from what your mask values are. All right. So you can have, we're more used to seeing black and white masks because white is going to show 100% and black is going to hide 100% of your image. But those aren't the only masks. All right. When we get into luminosity masks, we're dealing with, shades of gray, either light grays, dark grays, and things like that. So it's always going to use whatever values are adjacent along that mask edge. All right. So in this case, it's black and white, but you can have, 40% gray to 80% gray. All right. And it's going to do the transition. The feather is just going to transition whatever colors are along that edge. All right. So no, you can't dial in values like that, but you can dial in, how many pixels it's going to influence and how much of a contrast edge it has. So 100% contrast is going to give you a very sharp definition between one color and the other. Okay. All right. So hopefully that answered that one. And then last one I'm going to talk about really quickly is shift edge. Shift edge. This applies when you're doing cutouts. All right. If you're not too careful with the cutout and you start getting a little bit of the background, you can shift your edges in to remove that background, but that's a different lesson. Okay. So what I've done here is I've just basically softened that edge. Okay. All right. Once that's dialed in, I hit OK. And you'll see that I now have that soft edge. Soft edge. Okay. Just like that one. All right. So that right there is a normal layer filled with white and a mask applied to your image layer. This right here is probably the most basic, most fundamental use of a layer. Okay. So if you can create shapes with either a lasso tool or, a shape tool, or even with a pen, then you'll be able to make masks. All right. Okay. Now, what we need to do, though, is we need to replicate this kind of wide angle or fisheye lens look. Okay. So we're going to need to take a few steps here. All right. So any questions about the mask layer? No? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So delete that. Okay. I'm going to get rid of this layer. All right. And now what I want to do is I want to distort this image to give it kind of like that fisheye lens. Right. And for that, what we're going to do is we're going to go up to our plugins, or no, I'm sorry, not plugins, filters. Okay. Our filters, and we're going to our Liquify. Liquify. All right. And what that's going to do is it's going to open up a new dialog window, and you're going to see all kinds of little tools, and we have to wait a little bit for Photoshop to catch up here. All right. And if we look on the left-hand side, we have our toolbars. All right. Our first one is what's called the forward warp tool. And this just kind of pushes things around. We have a reconstruct tool, which kind of brings everything back to its original form. Smooth tool kind of smooths the edges of what you're liquefying. We can twirl. We can pucker, which means to pinch in. And we have our bloat tool, which kind of like pushes out. And then we have a few more. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our bloat tool. And I'm going to make this a very, very, very large brush. Okay, I'm going to. And you know what? I probably should have reduced the size down so I'm not lagging. Give me a second. Let me do that. Otherwise, we're going to be lagging. Let me resize my my image here. Let's go to 2200. Otherwise, we'll be waiting here forever. All right, filter, liquify. There we go. Already running faster. Okay, and I'm going to make it fairly large. All right, and if I start tapping, you notice that we're suddenly getting a bulged out view. Bulged out view. All right. How much of this effect you want, okay, will determine what what it is you want to do with that particular image, okay? If we do the pinch, all right, actually let me reset that. All right, reconstruct, okay. Let's see. Oh no, restore. There we go. Restore. All right. If we go to our pinch tool, it'll do the opposite. It actually pinches in. Pinches in. Okay. So you can do all kinds of funky effects here. All right. So what we want to do is we want to kind of give this a little bit of a bloated look. All right. So I'm going to pinch out. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my first tool here. All right. Make this very large. And I'm going to start bringing those edges in. All right. Very carefully bring those in to kind of give it that kind of warped, scrunched in look. All right. A little bit more of a circular look. All right, kind of like that snow globe look, okay? All right, and we're going to say okay. All right, we have a large amount of distortion, okay? Now, we're basically going to repeat the same process we did before with the circular marquee. Except this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a different way of generating a background. Previously, what I did is I went down to the bottom, hit the new layer icon to create a new blank layer. This time, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to go down to the bottom, and there's that half black, half white circle. If we click on that, it brings up our different effects layers or our adjustment layers. All right. But the very, very first one is a solid color layer. Okay. And at this, we can create whatever color we want as a background. All right. And sometimes it's a little bit more preferred as far as generating a blank background, because you can always change the color later on. All right, so in this case, we're going to go, our hue is going to be 0, our saturation is going to be 0, and our brightness is going to be 100. All right, 100. If we wanted middle gray, we just put 50%. All right, it would give us 50% gray. But in this case, we want 100. All right, and that's going to give us pure white. Drag that below. And you can see now our edges that we kind of crunched in, those are now filled with white rather than that checkerboard pattern. Okay. We're going to select our image layer. I'm going to come back here to our elliptical tool, and we're going to just do the same thing. Okay, I'm going to create a circle holding the Shift key. Shift will lock that in. Oops. And we're going to just go ahead and move that to right about the center there. Okay. That's a little bit too large. All right, another way you can do this, all right, the Shift key will lock you to a complete circle, right? If we do a what is it? I can never remember. Alt Shift. Alt Shift. There it is. We can go right from the center and then Alt Shift. It will draw that circle from the center outward. Okay. All right. And then we can just position it. Go down to the bottom. Click on our mask tool to create a mask. There we go. Give our edge a little bit of a feather. What was it? 10 points. And I'll give it a 20%. Hit OK. And now we have a nice soft edge. Okay. Now we have something that resembles this a little bit more. Okay. Got that, Carol? Making a little bit of sense for you? All right. Okay. So that's using the Liquify tool. The Liquify tool. All right. We're going to do one more. Show you another way of doing it. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back. All right. I made, of course, because I'm flying like the wind here, not paying attention to what I'm doing, I forgot one very important step. And that step was to make a duplicate of my layer before I made all these changes in the Liquify, right? Because now I can't take that Liquify and unliquify it, all right? So I'm going to go here, File, Revert. It's going to revert back to my my full resolution image of the church. So, lesson learned. Always make a duplicate so that you can work non-destructively. Image, image size. There we go. Okay. Control J duplicates, or Command J will duplicate your layer. I'm going to go ahead and hide this one. We don't need it. All right. Again, I'm going to come down to the bottom, create a new solid color layer. All right. Make it 100% white. Drop that down below. All right. And for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Transform tool. All right. So if we go Edit, Free Transform. All right. Edit, Free Transform. What it does is you notice, here, let me shrink this down a little bit. You notice we have now these little white squares around the perimeter. These, I'm sure you're familiar with them. These are control points. And what this does is it allows us to scale, all right, and stretch and shrink, all right, either horizontally or vertically, all right, and all that good stuff. Okay. Now, if we look all the way up at the top, all right, we're going to see this little icon that looks like a grid that's on an arc. If we click on that, we have over here a bunch of ways we can warp and distort our grid. All right, so we have right now it's the default, but we can do it 3x3, 4x4, or 5x5 grid, or you can do a custom grid, right? And what this does is it divides your screen up into control points. So now instead of just having the 4 corners and the 4 sides, we now have 4 rows and 4 columns with these control points. And we can take and move these control points around to warp our image. All right. The other thing we can do is right next to it, where it says warp, it says custom, we have presets. All right. So many of these are used when you're dealing with text. So for example, if you want to put text in an arch, you would apply this arch custom grid over it. Okay. But you'll notice down at the bottom, we have one that's called Fisheye. All right. And what that does is it inflates the center just like previously. Okay. So this is a shortcut that you can use. All right. And of course, right next to it gives you the ability to apply how much warp you want to apply. All right. So right now it's at 50. Let's go to 80. Okay. And you'll notice that it really bloats it out. Okay. Now, this is nice, but we need to take it up that extra level. Okay. Right now, we're basically just doing what the Liquify tool did. But if we look at the example that Carol gave, we'll notice that the trees on the side are really, really, really warping, because this was probably taken with maybe like an 8mm fisheye lens. So what you're seeing here is normal to that lens. What we want to do is we want to replicate it. So we need to get that kind of extreme bend happening on the edges of our image. And you'll notice that as we go into the center of the image, that distortion tends to fade away. Again, this is a property of a lens. All lenses do this. All right. The reason we see this is because we're dealing with an extreme fisheye lens. All right. So the fisheye lens will give us this distortion on the edge. However, if we were looking at this through a zoom lens, all right, a zoom lens, this is what we would see. Let me bring this down. This is what we would see with a zoom lens. All right. Notice that there's no distortion. All right. The reason there's no distortion here is because we don't see it. It's outside of our range of what was captured on the sensor. All right. So the lens, the curvature of the lens is this part of that fisheye lens. All right. Just scaled up to match the resolution of your camera. Make sense? All right. Let me get rid of that. All right. But anyhow, this curvature here is what we need to replicate. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our image. We're going to go to Edit, free transform, and we're going to go click on that Distort Grid. All right. And let's do 5 by 5 and see what we get. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take these corners. Actually, you know what? Let me go to something simple. Let's do 3 by 3. All right. I'm going to take these corners and I'm going to start bringing them in. All right. And you'll notice that they have these little handles that come off each point. All right, you're probably not seeing it up there because it's against the blue sky. All right, let me zoom in. Oh, won't let me zoom in while I'm here. Okay. But if you notice that there are these little handles, all right, if you've used the pen tool or if you use any kind of vector program, you'll recognize these. This allows you to control how the image bends out from that point. So what we're going to do is we're going to start bringing all these points in. Okay. Oops, I keep hitting outside these little points here. I'm going to start bringing these points in order for us to really start distorting this image. Okay. And now you notice that all my straight lines are now starting to warp. Okay. We're really bringing these in, turning them. Okay. And we can take these and we can start doing the same thing. All right. Really starting to warp that image. Okay. Now, obviously, you are going to need to spend a little bit of time to get the desired effect. All right. But we can really, really manipulate that image around. Okay. So bring these points in. Start really warping, getting that circular look. There we go. That's looking a little bit more realistic. All right, warp, warp. All right, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but you get the gist of this, right? Manipulating the points in order to get that circular look. All right, and once you get that effect going, what are you going to do? Going to create a mask, just like we did before. Create our, we need to commit it. Get our elliptical tool. Alt-Shift from the center. Place that right on there. And create our mask. Control-0. Feather, 10 points. Contrast about 20%. We're good. Hit OK. And there we go. All right. Now, obviously, I rushed it a little bit. You would have to take your time in order to manipulate the points. You can make more points if you need to. All right. To get this looking the way you want. All right. Did I blow some minds out here? Who's going, oh right now?
I think it's easier if you just have a fisheye lens.
There you go. I'm for that one. I'm with you on that one, Carol. I've got one, and it is a lot easier.
Yes. Very, very much so. Yes. obviously there are benefits to having that wide angle lens, because you're going to get a more realistic effect. All right. Especially with the transitions from that heavily distorted outer edge, moving in. Okay. You will definitely see the image quality with the fisheye lens. But if you don't have a fisheye lens, this is one way of doing it. Okay. All right.
Thanks, Doc.
All right. And actually, there you go. You can see how it really warped it. Yeah.
I like that.
There you go. Yeah, you can do something like that as well. Okay. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Let's play with this. All right. It kind of looks like we are holding a lens or a crystal ball there.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
All right. What do we need to sell this effect? Well, for one, we're going to need some highlights. All right.
Won't you have to turn it upside down too?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, let's see. Let's flip this. All right.
At least do something with the cars.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, you've got two cars on top of each other.
Oh, yeah. So, okay. So let's rotate this 180. Okay. So this would be more realistic to what you would see if you held a lens, right? It kind of loses it though for me.
And it would be rendering the correct way up. It looks cool the other way.
Yeah. I was just going to say, this would be physics-wise, this would be correct. But I kind of do like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's play with this. This is our fantasy scene anyway. We can do whatever we want with it. It's our world. Physics works differently here. Okay. What we need to do is we need to add some highlights.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Absolutely.
What step did you do to get that into the original layer?
So what I did is I had my background layer in between the two. All right.
Okay.
And what I did is I just dropped it down. But you can do the same thing, if you have
okay, I got
my original layer, you can also turn it off by clicking on the little eyeball. So you can turn it off, turn it back on. All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So that's all that is. All right. So now we need to add highlights. Do we add shadows here, folks? Do we add shadows? Trick question. Do we add shadows to a crystal ball? Anybody know the answer to this?
No.
No. Why not?
Well, not
What's that?
It's crystal.
It's crystal. Light shines through. Exactly. There's nothing to cast shadows. All right. You passed.
Although, if you want to, you can consider the structure within the crystal ball to be the object to cast a shadow.
Yes, but even then, you can't cast shadows on glass. You can cast shadows.
It's a fantasy world.
Yes.
From the building
okay.
through the glass.
That's the Twilight Zone.
But even fantasies, even fantasy rules, even fantasy worlds have to conform to a certain amount of physics. We can't go too far beyond, otherwise our minds can't comprehend it. So we're still dealing with that ape mind here. So, all right. So what we need to do is we need to add some highlights. For this, I'm going to, on top of our distortion layer, we're going to add a new blank layer. New layer. Okay. And now I need to create a container to be able to allow me to paint within that circle, all right, in order to paint my highlights in. So now I can say, well, I can try to recreate that selection by going with my ellipse tool, and now I can see if I can make that exact size again. And oh no, that's not good. I can be here forever trying to get a new selection based on that size. Or I can cheat. All right, we can cheat. It says, well, I've already done it once. It's right here that I used for my mask. So why can I not use that? All right. So if we press and hold the Control key or the Command key for you Mac people and click on that mask, lo and behold, we get the marching ants to our border of that black mask. Pretty easy, right? One thing to keep in mind, though, it uses 50% gray as the break point between what is white and what is black. All right. So remember earlier we put that little bit of a fade on our border? What it's looking for is that 50% gray between that white and that black edge that we feathered, and that's what it's building that mask on. All right, so keep that in the back of your head, because right now it's simple, but if you get more complex, you're going to notice that your selection is going to look a little wonky. All right, so now we have our selection. We're going to go and make our new layer the active layer by selecting it. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rename that highlights. Okay, highlights. So now if I select a brush and I make white my foreground color, all right, if I paint on that layer, it's going to paint white, but you can notice that if I paint outside, it doesn't paint. Everything's restricted to that selection that we made, right? Make sense? All right, so let me Control Z. All right, so what we need to do now is we need to just very lightly, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very lightly start painting on the outside. Oh, what happened here? There we go. Somehow it got mixed around. I'm going to just very, very lightly just go around and a little bit on the left and a little bit on the right just to give that effect of brightness. Right? Just hitting that edge really, really lightly. Okay. And a little bit on the bottom, just kissing that center part at the top and the bottom. All right. So now if we remove that marching ants, and we do that with the Control D is the shortcut, Control D or Command D gets rid of the marching ants. Now we notice that we have a very, very bright highlight that we painted in. All right. And because we used an opaque color, you'll notice that it's actually painting over all that detail. So what we need to do is make this look a little bit more, make this look a little bit more realistic. So what we need to do is we need to tell Photoshop that we have to make the white of this layer blend in with what's underneath it. All right, we want some of what's underneath to come through. So for that, we're going to apply a oh, and you know what happened? I painted on the wrong layer with all that goofing around. All right. So I'm gonna need to really back up here for a second, guys. For some reason, come on, back. Well, let me go back all the way. All right, give me 1 second. Where's my history? History. Let's just go. It's not going to let me go back, is it? All right. See, this is what I get for not slowing my butt down. Look what I did. I painted right on my actual layer. All right. Give me 1 second, guys. Let me fix that real quick. All right. Control D, Control J. What we're going to do is we're going to edit, free transform. We're going to apply that fisheye. All right. Well, what do we do? 80, right? Was it? Oh no, we all right. Control 0. Let me shrink that down. All right, we're going to do this the quick and dirty way here. Just in order to catch up here. All right. There we go. Now we have, oops, wrong one. Okay. Let me get rid of that. Put on a new layer. Now we're back. So we're back in the same spot. Make sure you don't do what I just did and paint on the wrong layer. I actually painted on my warp layer. All right, make sure you're painting on that new layer that you just created. Okay, so let me quickly paint. Control Z. All right, here we go. All right. So now, again, it's a little too harsh. What we need to do is go to, in our layers panel, you're going to see a drop down that says normal. All right. This is all our layer effects that we can apply, our blend modes. Okay. And as you notice that there's a lot of them. Okay. And one of the best ways to remember what does what is take a look, and you'll notice that there's a line every so often. And it divides this list into groups. But if you look at the first one says darken. Everything in that group will darken your image. The next one is lighten. So everything in that group will lighten what your image based on what's on here, right? And then the next one is is more of a blend between the two, okay? And that's what we're going to look for, all right? The first one is overlay, all right? So if I click on overlay, and if I zoom in, where's my select? Zoom, okay. I want you to look where this white edge is, okay? This is normal. Notice how it really hides all the detail of that clouds. If I select overlay, now what we're seeing is we're seeing some of that detail come through. All right, remember earlier I said mask selections work on selecting that 50% gray demarcation. This works the same way. What it's looking for is that break point, 50% gray between the white and the black. So if you notice, the clouds here, they range from white to light to not quite medium gray. All right, so you notice that the white that we painted is kind of obscuring those light tones. But where the blue is of the sky, the blue tone, if we were to convert that to a gray, it would be around that 50% mark or darker. So it's using that 50% demarcation. It's saying anything that's 50% and darker, I want you to show and interact with. So what it's doing, it's lightening everything, but because this area is already light to begin with, you're not going to notice it. But here, where it was dark and that 50% gray or darker, there we can really notice it. But you notice that it's also lightening that area. So if we look at the blue outside of where we painted, it's more of that closer to that middle gray, kind of grayish blue. Where the white is, you can notice that that blue is significantly brighter. Okay? And we see that the same thing, excuse me, with the colors of the building. Everything that was white got lightened up, all right? But we're not going to notice it too much because the tonal range is very close to what's already there. Where we notice it is with the darker tones. So what it's doing is it's blending the new layer with the underlying layer, all right, and giving us that difference. So now, when we look at it, it looks like a natural highlight, as if the glass is picking up the light from around it, okay? So that's overlay, and you can see, excuse me, it's pretty intense. The next one down is soft light, all right? And you can notice that the interaction between the two looks a lot softer. It's a lot less intense, all right? So it's not boosting the saturation as much as the previous blend mode, the overlay. The overlay is really pushing the saturation. You can see it, over where the green of the trees are, the green of the grass, okay? Whereas the soft light, it's just brightening it without pushing the contrast or saturation. So this now looks a lot more realistic, doesn't it? Okay. We're going to do one more blank layer. All right, well, let me call this one Edge Highlight. Okay. And on this one, what we're going to do is we're going to do a specular highlight. Specular highlight. So I'm going to take my nice soft round brush, okay, and I still have my white as my foreground color. I'm just going to take and do one of these. I'm going to maybe resize down and maybe do something like this here. All right. Very simple curves. I'm going to go ahead and change the blend mode to soft light. All right. And maybe bring the opacity down just a touch. All right. Actually, that doesn't look too good. So let's go to just regular overlay. No, that's still not looking very good, is it? All right. So how about one of these other pin light? All right. Bring the overlay down. All right. That's looking a little bit better. Okay. So we can see up here, this highlight is over pure tone blue, so we're not going to notice it. But this lower highlight, you can see where it crosses over the building, so you can still see some of that building come through. So it's not quite a very heavy, intense highlight, but it allows us to create something that gives a little bit of interest, more of a bubble shape, gives us that clue that we are dealing with something that is shiny, okay? Now, of course, if we wanted our specular highlights to be a little bit sharper, all right, then what we can, oops, let me do this again. We can do it another way. I can, let's go to the lasso tool, all right? And I'm going to create a kind of a funky shape there, isn't it? All right, oh, Control Z. Let's do the add. There we go. All right. And then I can take and fill that with white. Get rid of my mark. All right. Bring the opacity down a little bit. All right. And now we have a highlight. Of course, I kind of rushed that a little bit. You would want to make that a little bit neater. Okay. And, you know, if you wanted to soften the edges up, you can maybe use the blur tool. Soften those edges up a little bit. All right.
So, is it possible to make it look iridescent, like if somebody were really blowing bubbles? You know?
There is. You have to really manipulate the highlights and the colors. One way to do that is see if you can find a source for a bubble, so that way you get more natural looking highlights. Or if you're up for the challenge, set yourself up with a black background. Let me switch over. Set yourself up with a black background, two lights, left and right, crossing in the middle. Okay. Focus your camera on that spot between the two lights, and then just blow bubbles and photograph the bubbles. All right. And what you'll get is the two side lights will create highlights on your soap bubbles, and it'll be against a black background. All right. So now what you'll be able to do is be able to take that, use it as an overlay, and have the highlights of your actual photograph become the highlights of this new sphere. Okay. Now, I'm not sure if I can find, let me see if I can find a soap bubble reference. Let's see. Copy. All right. Let's see if, oh, this is way too small. Okay, well, maybe we can use something like this. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, this is kind of small for our needs. It's going to come out a little bit pixelated. Okay. But what we can do is
You're not showing us anything, Doc.
Oh, sorry. Let's switch back over to the desktop. That helps. Thanks. All right. So this isn't the best image, but doing a quick search, this is what I came up with. So let's take that layer. Okay. And what we'll do is we'll convert it
Doug?
to black and white. Yep.
Doug, can you take that, make it a smart object, and then it won't pixelate out when you make it bigger?
Yeah, but it'll still pixelate even as a smart object. Just because I'm going too extreme a size. The smart object only is based on its original size. So because the original size is already a low quality, it's not going to make that big a difference. It's when you go from big size down to small and back up where you want that smart object working in your favor. All right. Oh, wrong shape. Wrong shape. Let's go here. Control Shift I, delete. All right. Okay, so what I did, I just got rid of a lot of that extra black. Okay. So now what we have is we have this nice soap bubble that somebody photographed. Okay. And the reason we want it on a black background is that we want to be able to use blend modes in order to what happened here? Okay, we want to use the blend modes to get rid of all that black and just have the white. All right, so let me hide that. I got rid of my highlights that I painted in. Okay, I just turned it off. All right, we're going to use this. So again, we're going to go to our blend mode function here where it says normal. We're going to drop that down. All right, and the first one is darken. We actually don't want to darken what's there. We want to lighten what's there. Okay, so we're going to use one of our lighten modes. Okay. And what this does is anything that is 100% black, it's going to make invisible. Okay? It's going to make it visible. And whatever is 100% white, it's going to make that 100% visible. Follow? All right. And everything from there is going to be a percentage of visibility. Okay? So in this case, we want to retain our highlights. So we can use either lighten or screen. And if you notice, as I hover over each one, it's going to give me a preview of what that looks like. All right. So I think it's either going to be lighten or screen, depending on how intense you want it. All right. And I think the lighten mode looks the most natural. Okay, so I'm just going to place that right over our warped image. Okay, hit enter. All right, and if that's a little bit too intense, we can always drop down the opacity on it a little bit. Okay, and if you want, you can always add. Oh, what happened to our thing here. You can always augment it by adding additional painted on effects. Okay, so that's without the previous layer and with the previous one that we just highlighted the edges. Okay, and then now we can see that, you know, it looks like the clouds are being reflected. All right, and we got all kinds of crazy reflections. So yes, you can make it look more realistic, like a soap bubble. All right, any questions on that? You got all kinds of new toys to play with, Carol. Right? Oh, we can turn that background off. And remember, we said we used a color layer as a bottom. We can click on that and we can change that to black. There we go. All right. I don't think our top layer is quite the same size. Let me shrink that down. That looks about right now. Is that right? Okay, there we go. All right.
That's cool.
And now you have a soap bubble church. Church in a soap bubble. Okay. So you have several ways of warping, and the rest is just layer masks. Layer masks. Okay. All right. The last thing I want to talk to you about is the adjustment layers. Okay, adjustment layers. All right, and that's these right up here. All right. The most common layer that you will use as you edit will be your curves adjustment layer. Okay, curves adjustment layer. And on this curves adjustment layer, if you're not familiar with curves, what this is the point all the way at the left is your black point. And the point all the way on the right is your white point. So keep in mind, you have the dynamic range of your image. Come on, is that going to get bigger or what? No, it's not. All right. That goes from 100% black to 100% white. All right. Or you can look at it as 0% light and 100% light. So 0% light will be full black and 100% light will be full white. And the reason this is at an angle is because on the white side, you cannot get whiter than 100% white, correct? And then on the left-hand side, it's all the way down at the bottom because you cannot get blacker than 100% black. It's impossible. However, you can take your white, your blacks, and you can make your blacks lighter. You can make it so that they're all the way to 100% white. And then you can take your whites and you can make those dark so that your whitest whites are now black. All right. And what you get is a negative inverted image, but that would be the extreme. Okay. Or you can just make everything 100% black. All right. So that's just by controlling your points. Now you can create additional points anywhere along this scale. All right. And you'll notice that there's a histogram here. That histogram is based on the image that you are working on. It's not based on your initial image that you used. It's based on everything that you're doing to your image. So all these layers applied below it are affecting this histogram. Any changes you make to that, to any of those layers below, is going to alter that histogram. All right? Just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Now, we can place a point anywhere on here, all right? And if you notice that there's a grid, right in the center is our 50% gray, 50% gray, all right? And that's represented by 128, 128, all right? So your input, all right, which is this bottom, all right, is 128. And your output is 128. That's going to give you middle gray. If I shift that up, what it's going to do, it's going to say, all right, I want you to take everything that was middle gray. I now want you to brighten it up because we're pushing this curve upwards to the white area. And you can see that on the side here. All right, it's going out. So this is our output. We're saying everything that was here, all right, because our point was here, everything that was here is now going to be pushed up into the white, okay? Or we can take it and push it down below that line, and it's going to push it into the black. So we can brighten and we can darken. All right, and because we can apply different points along this line, we can say we want to brighten our blacks a little bit and we want to darken our darks a little bit. So that's going to give us an S-curve. All right, an S-curve. All right, this will normalize a lot of problems with your exposure. Okay, this type of S-curve. Right, so those really, really brights are going to tone down a little bit, and those deep, deep shadows are going to open up a little bit because we're taking our shadows and we're going upwards into the white, and we're taking our highlights and pushing them down into our blacks. If we reverse that, we get a different type of S-curve. This is called a contrast curve. Because what we're doing is we're taking the extreme ends of our histogram and pushing them further out. We're making our blacks blacker and we're making our lights lighter. Okay? So it's creating a little bit more contrast. All right? And you can see that if I turn that off, you can see how that punches the contrast. All right? And if
how different is using this than using the black and white sliders? The black and white sliders.
In Lightroom?
Yeah, in Lightroom or in Photoshop.
Well, in the ACR.
Camera raw.
Same exact thing.
Okay.
Same exact thing. Except what this is doing is this is applying it as an editable layer.
Okay.
If you do it in Camera Raw, you can't edit those here. You would actually have to go back into Camera Raw. All right. So that's why I normally say use Camera Raw to normalize your image. Okay. Get it looking kind of the way you want to start off with, and then make the artistic changes in Photoshop. All right. So Camera Raw or Lightroom, if you go from Lightroom into Photoshop, or if you go from Adobe Camera Raw into Photoshop, same thing. You're just going to use that pre-step to normalize your image, and that means fixing your horizons. If you want to preset your format, your crop for some reason, you can do it there as well. You would do your color correction there, and fix your exposure there. Maybe even do some, to a certain extent, those effects that you do to all your images, which you've heard me say before, there are certain things that I do to all my images all the time, no matter what. And that's, that little bit of contrast boost, that little bit of vibrance and saturation, because that's just what appeals to me. So that I will do in Lightroom and Camera Raw. And then I don't have to worry about that, applying those fixes in Photoshop. I can then concentrate on the more artistic things in Photoshop. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So let me fix this a little bit. My circle's a little off. There we go. Okay. All right. So that's your curves adjustment. Okay. Now you can take this curves adjustment and apply it to very specific layers. So for example, in this particular curves adjustment, it's affecting everything globally. But let's say I wanted to just affect that bubble effect layer, all right? Because without it, it really, that bubble effect isn't quite that punchy, okay? So I can say I want to apply this curves adjustment just to that bubble effect. So for that, you have to make sure that your adjustment, all right, the curves adjustment that you created is right above what you want to lock to. All right, so in this case, here's my bubble. I want to apply that effect just to the bubble. All right, and there's a couple ways to do it. The easiest way is when this dialog window is out, you just come down to the bottom where these icons are. And the first one, you'll notice, has a little square with a down arrow with a line through it. This is what you use to clip the layer to the one below it. All right. And you notice that now we have a new designator on this layer here with a little down arrow. And this shifted over. That means this adjustment only affects the layer below it. Okay? Only the layer below it. All right, so now if I turn that effects off, you notice that it's only affecting my bubble layer, and you can see it on the edge. So let me make this a little bit more noticeable. All right, so if I turn it off, turn it back on, you'll see that that effect really, punches up a little bit. Okay? All right, rather than affecting everything. Okay. All right. Now, we have a little bit of a problem. My bubble effect is actually spread across two layers. All right. Let me turn this effect off. We have the bubble, right? And we have that white edge that I painted. Okay. So both those layers actually creates my bubble effect. All right. But if I lock that curves adjustment to the actual bubble effect, okay, it's not doing anything to that other layer. So let's say I wanted to affect both. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate those. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bubble and my edge highlight, and I'm going to group it. All right. So we can group it, layer group layers, Control G or Command G. Okay. And I'm going to call that bubble effect. Okay. Now that bubble effect, all right, is now grouped into a single object. So now I can take that curves adjustment and lock it, clip it to just that bubble effect. All right. Did it? Oh, it didn't. All right. Proved me a liar. Why didn't it do that? Okay. I'm stumped because I thought that would work. And what it's doing is it's passing through. So I am wrong. And I apologize. And now I don't know what the solution is. Oh my God. All right.
Have to clip it on the little like paper clip thing here.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm probably missing something very obvious, and I don't know what that is. But you should be able to clip to groups. Maybe you can't. To tell you honestly, well, whatever the case, if I need to, I'll just duplicate that. Oh, wrong one. Select my... No, there should be a way, and I don't know it. I'm sorry, guys. I thought I knew it. I don't know it. I'm going to have to do some research because I should be able to just group those and have that applied. Well, it applied it to something. So, anyhow, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one now. I thought I did. I don't. There's a gap in my knowledge there, and we just found it. So
You'll figure it out.
I apologize, but there should be a way of limiting it. So, but anyhow. But you do get the gist of clipping, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Clipping to the layer below it. All right. Okay. Any questions so far? We've covered quite a bit. Bill, you had some questions about working with layers. So anything you want to...
Yeah, I have trouble sometimes. I may do something to a low-level layer, like maybe take out a twig or something.
Okay.
And then I do different things, like I will use layers. So, like I will do a layer to maybe like sharpen, or do another layer to darken or whatever, and I write the name of the layer. This way I know what I did, and I can delete it or change the opacity if I want to.
Correct.
Sometimes, once I get to a top layer, closer to the bottom, I'll realize, I really wanted to get rid of the twig here. And then I go back and get rid of the twig, and unfortunately, the upper layers, it doesn't get rid of the twig in the upper layers.
Okay. All right. So, one of the things that you have to be concerned with is working non-destructively. All right. And I showed you a good example of that when I forgot to replicate my layer before I warped it. And then when I needed to go back to that layer, I wasn't able to. All right. So here's a perfect example. We have this warped layer to give it that bulged out look. Okay. And the layer underneath it is my regular layer without the effect. So you have to keep in mind the order in which your layers are built and at what point you created a destructive layer. Because it's the destructive layers that are going to give you the most amount of problems, because they're not easily editable. All right. And these are layers that, like maybe you did a copy, a duplicate by copy, which basically takes everything below it. I'll show you. All right. So
Control J.
Control
J.
No. Control J gives you a copy of the layer below.
Right.
All right. Or whatever layer you selected. All right. So in this case, I have my bubble layer selected. If I do Control J, it's just going to duplicate that layer. All right. If I want to create a hard copy of everything that I've done for a Windows, it would be Control Alt Shift E. All right. Or Command Option E. Command Option Shift E, I believe, for the Mac. All right. And what that does, Control Alt Shift E, is going to do a stamp layer over everything. Okay. And what this does is it makes a duplicate of all your layers and compresses it into a single layer. All right. So let me go ahead and group everything here. Control group. All right. So here's all my layers.
You
Okay.
said the word compress. Is it taking away any quality?
Yes. It's compressing everything you did and baking it into its own JPEG.
Because sometimes I do, I compress it several times.
Yes, and as soon as you said you make a change on your lower layer and doesn't translate up, I knew exactly what you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
And it's because you're doing these layers. Now, what you have to do is you have to avoid, as much as possible, creating these types of layers, because you cannot make any changes underneath it. All right. So, for example, if I say, "Oh, you know what? My layer, my highlight layer is misaligned here." Okay, I can't go to that edge highlight and realign it. Okay, because it's not showing. All right, it's not showing here because that layer that I created is hiding everything below it. All right. Soon as I turn that off, there's my misaligned layer. Okay. I now have to go back, realign it. All right. And make a new stamp layer of everything below it. Oh. Take my spotlight off. Control Alt Shift E. Oh, there it is. Oh, one too many. All right. There's my new stamp layer. Okay. And I can say, okay, on this, I'm going to create another curves adjustment. All right. Maybe I want to boost the saturation, whatever it is. Okay. And I say, you know what? I'm not liking that edge. I want just a bubble effect. I need that edge gone. Well, guess what? Because that layer is burnt in, I can't make changes to that anymore. Okay? So you have to be very careful how you build your layers. All right? So what I would do is try to keep certain things in mind as you build your layers. All right, so the first thing you're going to do to your base layer is make any physical corrections to that layer. So for example, if you're retouching somebody's skin you're going to do your blemish removal first. You're going to do remove any stray hairs. You're going to remove any lint spots, all right? Because these are physical manipulations of the underlying pixels. You're actually making physical changes to the pixel structure, okay? Now, that can be done non-destructively as well by creating a new blank layer and making all your spot removal to that layer, okay? So, for example, in this case, let's say I wanted to get rid of these wires here, okay? If I show just that layer, or just, just that layer, all right? And I use my healing brush, okay? And I say I want to remove these wires. All right, I'm going to do a sloppy job here, guys, just for time's sake, okay? All right, I want to remove these wires. This is making a physical change to that pixel layer, all right? I'm actually altering those pixels. Now, if I turn on my, guess what? The lines are still here because this is a duplicate of the underlying layer. All right? So I can't translate anything I do on a per pixel level up to this layer. All right? At that point, I would actually have to come in here and remove these manually, all right, and duplicate. So that's the first thing you want to do before you make all these additional changes. Because having to come back to do this kind of work on multiple layers, it's just a big chore. You don't want to be doing that, all right? It's a time killer. So do that initially, and then from there, start building your image, all right? And obviously, it helps if you have sort of a roadmap of what it is that you want to do with your image. Okay, for example, you know, in this case, Carol says, I wanted to make it look like it's in a bubble. All right. So if you have that end goal, it makes building your layers a little bit easier because now you know, well, you may not know how to get there, but you kind of sort of do. All right. You know that you have to do a certain amount of warping. You know that you have to create some kind of highlight. You know that you have to create some kind of a circle, all right? So you have a vague idea, all right? Even if you have to stumble around a little bit in order to get there when you're first learning, that's fine. But you have a vague idea. So it helps to have an end goal, all right? And then sit down and analyze what it is that you need to do to get to that end goal. All right. So in this case, we had an example to go by. All right. So we knew what kind, not only that we had to warp, but what kind of warp to apply. All right. We knew we needed some kind of circular effect. All right. To replicate. All right. We also knew that it had to be a circle with a little bit of a soft edge. All right. So now when we apply our mask, all right, when we apply our mask, all right, we can say, let's soften that edge up a little bit. All right. So now you have that one step. Okay. You have that one step. And then all you got to do is problem solve. How do I accomplish that one step? All right. Well, I need to make a circular selection. Okay. Once I get my circular selection, all right, you look at it and you say, well, that's pretty hard edge. All right. What's the next step for that? Let's soften that edge. Okay. Now, at first, because you don't know all the tools, quite the way I do, it's going to take a little bit of fumbling around. Maybe you have to do a little bit of research online, okay? Or maybe you start off with a tutorial and follow the tutorial to get used to, that particular tool, all right? But once you have the tool and you understand what that tool does, all right, so in this case, the mask tool, and it says, oh, I know that in the mask tool, I can feather my edge. Well, that's going to give me that soft edge. All right. I can do it right in my mask. Okay. So now you have that little bit of information in your head. You have that tool to go to. Okay. And you say, okay, I've accomplished goal number 1. I got my circle and I got that nice edge. What's goal number 2? I got to warp it. Okay. Well, what's a warp? Where can we warp? Okay, so you do a quick little search. All right, how's this? All right, all the way up here is a little search tool. All right, little search tool. Okay, and we're going to get a little dialog box. Okay, let's type in warp. What do we get? All right, oh, here we go. We have warp, transform, we have liquify. Oh, we have distort. We have puppet warp. Oops. Didn't mean to click on that. All right. We have puppet warp and we have perspective warp. Okay. So right here, just by using that term, it says, all right, what is it that I want to do? I want to warp. All right. Let's type it in. What does it give me? All right. Well, let's take a look. Out of these, well, I'm kind of sort of familiar with Liquify. All right. If you used Liquify before, there you go. Give that a try. All right. But, oh, this one's Distort Transform. Oh, let's give that a try. All right. So we're going to click on Edit Transform. Okay. And it's like, oh, that didn't do anything for me. All right. But wait. All right. I'm seeing some things up here, all right? And, well, there's a transform right there, okay? And now, because you've had this lesson, you can now say, oh, yes, I remember Duck talked about this. Here we go. We're going to do this effect, or we're going to do this effect, okay? But by being able to go into this little search bar, it kicks start. All right. So now, after a while, you'll know this tool by heart. You'll be able to go to it, without having to really think about it. Okay. Now you say, oh, well, I need to create an overlay. All right. Here's my bubble. All right. Here's my bubble. All right. How do I create an overlay? All right, let's go up to the search tool. Overlay. Okay. UV overlay? No, I'm not looking for a UV. Color, gradient. Maybe a color overlay. Let's try that. Okay. Oh, there's something I've never seen before. All right. Well, it's asking me for a color, a blend mode. Oh. Here we go. What's these? Oh, there's overlay. What's that do? Oh, hey, look, it did something. Not quite what I was looking for, but maybe I'm on the right track. Let's try something else. Well, what is this? Here's darken. Oh, no, that's not what I want. Okay. Here's lighten. Oh, not quite what I want. All right. Here's hard light. Okay, so you can start, playing around with these, okay? And you can say, well, that's not quite what I wanted. All right, but look, on my layer, I have something similar. All right, here's screen, here's lion. Ooh, there we go. All right, so you start making these connections, okay? And of course, the more you use something, the more it becomes ingrained in your memory, and it becomes part of your toolbox, all right? So now you have a few more things in your toolbox to fall back on, okay? You now can make simple masks, all right? And you now can use blend modes, okay? You may not know which blend mode, but you know they're there, all right? So you can just go and you can say, oh, all right, well, there's my preview. That's not it. Go down, that's not it. Go down, that's not it. And you can just cycle through until you find, oh, there's something. Oh, it's a little harsh. Oh, there's one. I like that one, okay? All right. And then you say, okay, well, what else do I need? You know, I need to make, you know, that edge a little bit, you know, brighter. How can I do that? Well, I can paint on it. All right. So you paint on it and you look at it and say, oh boy, that's really horrendous. Well, I remember what I did with the bubble. Let's see if that works. Okay. Well, that's a little bit too bright. Okay. Let's try overlay. That's still a little bit too bright. Oh yeah, that looks good. Okay. So little trial and error at the beginning as you're learning. Okay. But once you start understanding some of these tools, all right, you may not be able to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G with the steps, but you know that C is somewhere there. Okay. So you start with C with what you know, and you say from there, I can deduce or I can experiment with to get to A, B, C, and D. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, guys. Any other questions? Let's bring that back up. I kind of like that effect. That's pretty cool. I think I'm going to post that to the group. I don't know whose bubble that was that I used.
Yes.
Okay.
By the way, that picture was taken on my 70th birthday.
Yes.
That's when we took that trip.
Yes, that's
So
right.
we brought cupcakes.
And we had cupcakes under the trees right across the street from this. Yes. It was a great day.
We'll have to do it again on my 80th.
A different location, maybe.
Why wait? Your 71st is coming up soon. We should do something like New Haven or Yale.
Okay, I'm game.
Okay, that works for me.
Yes.
Cool. All right.
Thank you, Doc. It was good.
You are welcome.
Now I'm going to take some more fisheye pictures and frame them like this.
Do you have a fisheye lens?
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's why
awesome.
I want to do this.
Oh.
Yeah. Just keep in mind that with your fisheye lens, you're going to get that distortion all the way to the corners. All right. So that because you're going with a circle, you're going to lose a lot of information on the edges. So make sure that you really watch your composition. So your composition is right in that center circle area. Okay. All right. Quick note. Just how was the quality of the video this time around?
Very good.
Awesome.
Last week was like this too, and when you did last Tuesday for North Haven, it was very good.
Yeah. So I think I got it licked with my hiccups that I had with OBS last time I tried this effect. All right. So I think, hey, we're getting closer to perfection here. All right.
Next thing you know, we'll be.
Sorry, I just have a question. I saw when you were talking on the upper right-hand corner, it looked like a little TV with you talking, and it was blocking, the Photoshop stuff for me to see, what you were clicking on.
My little inset.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Oh. Yeah. So I have it positioned Here, let me see if I can.
Here it's above. It was above the adjustment layers.
Yeah, it's right. It's yeah. You know what? All right. So if I move that down just a little touch, yeah. So I try to find a spot. If I actually turn it off, you'll see it's just the preview screen. So there's nothing important here. So that's why I put myself in that spot. So it's not hiding anything critical.
I just picked up if I was missing anything. That's all.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, but your frame is hiding everything, though, Doc. The frame around that picture is.
Well, no, it's actually not the frame. Oh, on the side here. Yeah. I did notice that I didn't quite whatchamacallit, have it all the way out. All right. Oh, what happened here? Where's my layers? Layers. Hey, here we go. If you notice that I originally had this layout here. The nice thing about Photoshop is you can configure the different windows, the different panels to how you work. All right. I like doing some painting. You guys, I posted a couple things. I'm learning to do digital painting with Photoshop. So I need access to my brushes and my color palette a lot more readily when I'm, doing painting than with photography. So this setup here is different than the default. So once you get it looking the way you want, you just go here. Let me hide this.
I have to make a phone call before 9 o'clock.
No problem.
Doug, thank you.
All righty.
Okay.
We'll see you next week.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
If we go up here to this little drop down, all right, you can create a new workspace. And what I did, of course, I just call it Duck Photo. All right. And then anytime you need to, get back to that desktop, you just click there. You have your presets. All right. This is what comes default with Photoshop. And you can always create as many profiles as you want, So, little extra tip. Any last minute questions? No?
Thank you, Doug. It was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, this was recorded. It'll be uploaded to YouTube. I probably won't get to it today. It'll probably be uploaded tomorrow. So you can always refer back to this episode. And of course, I appreciate all of my Patreon supporters. If you're not a Patreon supporter and want to, show me the love, you can become a Patreon supporter. $5 a month will get you in on my bottom tier. And we have the occasional Patreon-only events, which I got to start getting ready for one of those soon. So I appreciate all my Patreon supporters. I appreciate you guys for being here with me tonight. Be safe. And you can reach me on Facebook or email. And I hope to see you here next week.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.